Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke ESG scam getting canceled, thousands of layoffs as banks pull out. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from ZeroHedge.com, JP Morgan pulls out of $68 trillion climate action 100 plus group. Coming from DailyMail.com, corporate giants such as Meta, Amazon, and Google lost 3,000 ESG staffers in just 1 month as backlash over woke capitalism and equity hires intensifies. And from the Wall Street Journal, America's ESG hiring boom is starting to cool. Companies have slowed hiring on environmental, social, and corporate governance positions as they focus on cost cutting and higher investment returns. Yes, it's all coming crashing down from Zero Hedge. JP Morgan pulls out of $68 trillion climate action group. Zero Hedge has been covering the full-on implosion of ESG and green investing for the better part of the last 6 months, and today the wreckage continues. That's because mega bank JP Morgan Chase has officially left a $68 trillion investor coalition that is focused on pressing the world's biggest emitters of greenhouse gases to decarbonize. In other words, the fight to decarbonize is imploding. JP Morgan said it is leaving the Climate Action 100 Plus group because it has made significant investments in developing its own climate risk endowment framework. The bank claims to have 40 professionals now focused on sustainable investing. And the damage for the Climate 100 Plus may only be getting started. Lance Dial, a Boston-based partner at law firm K&L Gates LLP, told Bloomberg, quote, "I wouldn't be surprised if we see more defections, especially given that there's now a cost, such as potential litigation, that wasn't there when companies joined." He added, attorneys general have subpoenaed firms about their memberships of these groups because the membership in the group, as a financial organization or any organization that you might happen to be, includes a pledge to try to reduce carbon emissions and makes you part of certain guarantees that the group is saying they're going to pursue. You can't really do that as a financial institution and as a fiduciary if you're being scrutinized by Congress or lawsuits. It's in conflict with your fiduciary responsibility to try to make a return on investment for your investors. You can't just say, well, look, we're taking these actions because we're part of this financial group that has this absurd crusade that they're never actually going to successfully accomplish at the same time as we're disadvantaging our investors. It doesn't work that way. They've been caught and now they have to pull out of the group. The group responded by saying its 700 plus members are committed to managing climate risk and preserving shareholder value through their participation in the initiative. JP Morgan's involvement in the group was initially seen as a significant step in its ESG investment journey. However, the initiative, alongside its participants, has faced increasing criticism from Republican circles in the United States, labeling it and similar ESG efforts as politically motivated. Which of course it's politically motivated. This criticism has led many investment firms to retreat from publicly aligning with net zero commitments and downplay their involvement in climate-focused finance groups, which are now considered more of a political burden than a merit. Originally, the group aimed to engage major corporations like BP, ExxonMobil, and Glencore in enhancing governance, cutting emissions, and improving climate financial disclosures, the report says. As the initiative enters a more proactive stage, asking members to ensure companies transition from plans to tangible emissions reductions, the heightened activist stance poses additional difficulties for investors wishing to keep a lower profile in climate advocacy. So even doing something like this, JP Morgan Chase is able to do some things kind of quietly through their own sustainable employee division. They can't be signing on to whatever this crazy climate group says they're going to do publicly. They will still try to do some things they shouldn't be doing, but they're not going to be signed up to this very public ESG group. Even so, they're going to be careful because they know they're subject to lawsuits and congressional investigations. The ESG thing is falling apart completely now. Quote, the political wins aren't rewarding climate active firms today, but climate risk and regulations aren't going away in the mid to long run, so short-term decisions may need to be undone when those longer-term threats begin to manifest or regulators clamp down harder. said Michael Sheeran, a former senior analyst at the Bank of England who's now a fellow at the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. Quote, JP Morgan pulling out matters because it sends the wrong, short-sighted signal and gives cover for others to do the same, he added. And Zero Hedge says, of course others are going to pull out now. They noted earlier this year, quote, ESG has become a dirty word on Wall Street. For some context, peak ESG and related synonyms such as climate change and clean energy and green energy and net zero, among other terms, peaked at 28,000 mentions in the first quarter of 2022. Ever since, the number of mentions has rapidly plunged. Halfway through the first quarter earnings season, mentions are around 4,800. Zero Hedge has written about the dying off of ESG and green investment products over the past few months. Most recently, at the end of 2023, Goldman Sachs closed its active beta Paris-aligned climate U.S. large cap equity ETF. So they closed on a major investment fund tied in with the ridiculous Paris Accord-aligned climate U.S. large cap fund. Bloomberg ETF analyst Eric Balchunas pointed out last month, quote, that there was just way too much supply for the demand with the ETF and that it's going to get worse too. Balchunas says the ETF only took in $7 million over the course of 2 years. $7 million for an ETF like that is absolutely nothing. They were expecting something closer to at least $1 billion. They also wrote about Jeff Ubben late last year, who closed his sustainability fund, calling traditional climate symmetry an echo chamber of diplomats. Less than a week before that, they noted $30 billion had been shaved off the value of clean energy stocks over the preceding 6 months. Finally, they pointed out last year how the ESG grift was reaching endgame after Marcus Mueller, chief investment officer for ESG at Deutsche Bank's private bank, stated that the sustainability funds should include traditional energy stocks, arguing that not doing so deprives investors of a prime opportunity to invest in the transition to renewable energy. And from thedailymail.com, corporate giants such as Meta, Amazon, and Google lost 3,000 ESG staffers in just 1 month as backlash over woke capitalism and equity hires intensifies. Meta, also known as Facebook, Amazon, Google, and other U.S. firms are shedding staff with environmental, social, and governance roles, research shows, in the latest sign of the backlash against what critics deride as woke capitalism. More people left ESG jobs than started them for much of 2023, marking the reversal of a once mushrooming sector, according to Live Data Technologies, which tracks the employment market. U.S. firms saw 3,000 ESG departures in December 2023, compared with 2,897 arrivals. A net loss of 137 jobs, says the review of more than 360,000 U.S.-based ESG professionals that was published in the Wall Street Journal. Meta platforms, Amazon, and Google had the largest ESG job outflows among the U.S. firms last year, according to the data. The pattern was visible across other technology, financial services, and consulting firms. Those firms have not commented on the exodus. Quote, 2023 saw a real cooling in chatter around ESG and in some quarters, quite a pronounced attack on what ESG was about. Joe Dubbin, managing director at Cripps Leadership Advisors, a recruitment firm, told the Journal. Quote, it has certainly filtered through into the hiring requirements that we've been tasked to go do. ESG refers to business standards to promote socially conscious behavior, for example, by investing in wind farms or cutting fuel consumption in transport to fight climate change. The strategy gets more controversial when it guides funding to firms promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, which irk conservatives who say they help women and minorities by sidelining white men. This has spawned a fractious debate about whether the efforts to make society fairer and cut carbon emissions are actually in the strategic interest of investors by mitigating the risks of climate chaos and social disorder. As if ESG investments are somehow going to make the world more stable. They are absolutely not doing that. Anytime you're going to raise the cost of food and energy, it certainly doesn't make the world more stable. It makes the world less stable because less human beings can afford it and things go absolutely crazy. Companies now face pushback from investors who have cashed out billions from ESG funds in favor of higher returns elsewhere, and from Republican politicians and conservative activists, normal people, who issue diversity hiring initiatives. Hiring for ESG positions has generally climbed since 2018, dipped in 2020 amid the coronavirus pandemic, and reached a peak in late 2021. The sharp slowdown in hiring ESG workers is the latest sign of a cooling fad as investors cashed out of socially conscious funds. And as we know, in the last month, there were more people leaving ESG jobs than taking them. ESG funds saw their worst year on record in 2023, with investors pulling $13 billion from U.S. funds, a recent report from the financial services firm Morningstar says. That multi-billion-dollar exodus in the U.S. more than offset the inward flow seen in Europe, breaking down the ESG market globally. In the fourth quarter alone, investors withdrew $5 billion from ESG funds, making the fifth straight quarter of net outflows, the report says. According to Morningstar, investors exited ESG amid fears of poor returns, a hidden leftist agenda, and greenwashing or making a firm appear more environmentally friendly than it really is. Investors walked away from ESG funds chiefly over lackluster returns. Their performance improved from 2022's lows, but they still lag behind traditional peers. The median sustainable large blend equity fund generated 20.8% in 2023, lower than the 23.9% gains made by all types of funds overall. Questions about the future of sustainable finance persist in the U.S. as lawmakers from more than a dozen states from Florida to Utah try to fight the incorporation of ESG principles into normal business and investing. The weak period for ESG funds has been notable given the massive growth they've posted in recent years. ESG investing boomed in the pandemic when lockdowns caused energy prices to fall and buoyed portfolios that shun fossil fuels. Those same strategies have floundered as lockdowns ended and economic activity resumed. The results for ESG funds also got worse when interest rates went up. It's harder to make things work when you actually have to pay a return on investment, and high interest rates means you have to compete with putting money in very low-risk investments. ESG doesn't make that work. It just doesn't work. You also can't fake things as well when you have to pay high interest rates. I can't say that these funds were faking everything they were doing. I'm just saying high interest rates bring reality to bear a lot more quickly than low interest rates do. The amount invested in U.S. sustainable funds totaled $323 billion by the end of 2023, 12% lower than the record-setting amount invested in 2021. 12% is a massive drop. The underperformance of ESG-focused funds strikes at the heart of a core argument of ESG, that investors are rewarded by investing in companies that aim to make the world a better place. Advocates of ESG say it's a smarter way to invest because it factors in long-term concerns, such as the economic chaos from climate change and ever more freak weather events. While some nations are ramping up renewables and scrapping carbon-belching power stations, the transition is not smooth and near-term shocks hinder progress, according to the report. Which is to say, when JP Morgan goes its own way on ESG investing, it's pretty much the end of ESG dominance of financial markets. Good to see woke ESG is pretty much dead. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.